Welcome, folks. If I remember the title, it's Initiating and Maintaining Undergraduate Research Experiences. And we want to start by just telling you a little bit about who we are, both individually and then also thinking about the organization that is labeled above us. Okay. So I'm Rob Bachman, and I'm a faculty member at the University of the South, which is in Sewanee, Tennessee. It's a PUI with about 1,800 students total. And I've been a faculty member there for 25 years, and the 6 years before that, I was a faculty member at Georgetown University, where I was then a faculty member, therefore, at an R1 institution. So there's a little bit about me.
Hello, I'm Jeremy. I guess we'll just go down the line, make it easy. I'm Jeremy Klosterman. I'm at the University of California, San Diego. I'm a teaching professor in chemistry there. I started off first at Bowling Green State University, running a graduate lab at the small R1 university, and now I'm focusing more on teaching at a larger R1 university, and we have about 1,200 chemistry majors. Different perspective, yeah, it's like your entire university. We have about 60 faculty in chemistry, and if you do the math, getting all of those students into an undergraduate research experience is still incredibly challenging. And so what I've been working on there is focusing on, I guess, non-traditional research experiences, more looking at using internships. So having a course credit for internships at local pharmaceutical or biotech industries, and working with students to facilitate that, get them into those programs, and then working on scientific communication as part of their internship program. So a lot of students are doing it outside of the course credit. So I see a lot of more of the CPT students taking advantage of the course credit, but it's a way of trying to get more students involved outside of the traditional research experience.
Hello, so I'm Cheri Barta. I'm here, University of Wisconsin-Madison, but I started my career at the University of Nebraska at Kearney, which is a small PUI, so I was faculty there for a couple of years, and I loved it. And then family decisions brought me here to Madison. And so I was the director of undergraduate research in the chemistry department here at Madison for about 15 years, until the last 2 years when I got recruited for a position for director of experiential learning, still here on campus. At the time I was recruited, it was in the Division of Diversity, Equity, and Educational Achievement, which it has since been moved to the Division for Teaching and Learning. But the work within my office still prioritizes first-gen and limited income students. So right now, I primarily help first-gen and limited income students get involved in undergraduate research, cross-college and all sorts of disciplines. And then my office also does study abroad and career and internships.
Hi everyone, I'm Abby Boyd. I'm at the University of Mississippi. I'm an assistant professor. This is the end of my second year, so I'm by far the baby on the stage. But a lot of my research, so my background is in chemical education, and a lot of my research is involving how students get involved in undergrad research experiences, and also developing and assessing different types of research experiences, particularly course-based undergraduate research experiences. So, yeah, that's what we got going on up here.
So I do want to just point out what's behind us, which is the Council on Undergraduate Research. All of us are leadership in the chemistry division. These three are divisional representatives, and I'm currently acting as one of our two counselors on the next level leadership group. And if you notice, the group is built around, and it's actually historically for fun, it started by 30 chemistry faculty at PUIs. I forget, how many years back?
1980.
Thank you.
I deleted that off.
And ironically, at a coming home from a PitCon and sitting in the airport and saying we should figure out how to do undergraduate research better. So that's how the organization started, and it's grown beyond that. And it is been an amazing professional development group for many people through time. And so I think that's why we set this up, and that was to start a conversation with all of you to think about how you initiate doing undergraduate research, either in your own labs or in course-based structures, and then how do you maintain that through time? And I could add one small thing from my career, which is, as of today, I now have had 77 undergraduate research students. I'm aiming to hit that 30, that next digit before I ever retire.
So I guess at this point, we're thinking of kind of getting you guys involved in the conversation. So where would you like the conversation to go? If you want to talk to your neighbor and maybe try and think about some questions that you have. If you want to start focusing on more like how to start and initiate a research program, where would you guys like to discuss? So if you want to take 5 minutes and talk with your neighbors, and then we can kind of start the conversation in that way. So go for it. All right, so you guys are still actively engaged. I hate to break that up. But where do we want to start? What kind of questions do you and your group want to have for the panel to go through and kind of initiate and start the conversation?
And I hate to say this, but technically, because this is live streamed, we do need somebody to actually like either come to the microphones, or we can have somebody be nice and run around and hand them around. John, are you going to volunteer? Thank you.
I'm going to hand it around. So anybody have questions that we can? I think you want them to ask questions,
Ask
right?
questions or initiating the discussion. So if you have a statement to start with, go for it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll just, I'm Rebecca Black, I'm at Butler University, and we mostly talked about like what programs or things that we have at our institutions, and I was just sharing and figured I'd just tell everybody. I gave a talk yesterday about this, so maybe someone in this room have seen this, but Butler has a 1-week research boot camp to mostly target rising sophomores, but anybody could come as a way to demystify like what is research and like do I want to continue to do research and how do I approach faculty to do research. So it's a way to like onboard them into research and also have sort of centralized training for instruments that so faculty don't have to train individual students on like the NMR or something like that, safety training, things like that, to kind of do it all at the beginning and then give them an access to know exactly what kinds of research there is in the department, who's taking on students, how to contact those students. There's a little kind of overview at the end of the week, and then they could start research. 88% of students over the past 12 years that have done the program have done academic research, course enrolled research. So that's how we do it at Butler. Happy to talk about more, but that's
Fascinating. Quick question. So that boot camp, is that part of the academic semester, or is it?
it's the week before classes start. Faculty, somehow they figured out the dean pays faculty $500 to mentor students during that week. And then also like there's some money for students to get a stipend and to move in early for free.
Oh,
The
okay, that's the part.
department,
Yeah.
the department pays for breakfasts and lunch, but we don't have to go through catering on campus. We just go to Aldi.
Okay. Okay. That's a really unique model.
I'm actively writing it up, so hopefully I'll have lots of data to share with you. And
Okay, great.
Or something. Maybe someone in this room will review it.
Hi, I'm Sarah, and I teach at the on-campus version of Southern New Hampshire University. So we don't have a lot of support for undergraduate research at the moment. So I'm trying to come up with, question is, how do you come up with a project that is sustainable, kind of long-term, when I have students who come to me and they're either junior or senior year and they're only around for a year, and so they're like, oh, we have 2 semesters to try and figure out what this is and then do something meaningful, and then no or very little overlap between students who graduate and then the next incoming group. So like kind of short-term but also long-term projects.
That isn't what I'll call a fairly normal reality. I do have students that have joined my group in their first year and stayed with me through all 4 years. One of the funniest ones about that is that the one that did that the most engagement decided to not do their honors thesis. She had so many other things she wanted to do, and she said, I'm just not going to write it. Instead, she went to University of Chicago and got her PhD, so, hey. But no, I also have students that join the group, maybe as late as in that sophomore year of their junior year, and then they carry forward. And a great example of that is actually courtesy of the cure that I use. So I intentionally built my cure around the projects I'm doing in my research. And then I find the nuggets that I want to test and play with, and I bring them into the lab. And if I have now 5 teams working on these nuggets, right, then they could potentially move into the lab if they wanted to. And I've had 2 or 3 that did that. But then to move it along, you then just have to say, how far have you gotten? And you sort of realize, okay, this might be on hiatus for a while if you don't have a student coming in, and be okay with that. That's the first thing, to remember to be okay with. If you don't get the publication done in year 2, but year 4, it's okay. That's the PUI life. We're okay with that. So, does that help? Yeah. Well, I think my projects, I don't think I think about whether they're undergrad or grad. I think they bubble up because of something I saw, something I heard, something that maybe, I read, I don't know. And then it tends to stay somewhere near things I work on, so it doesn't migrate too far. I mean, well, I should say through when I started at Georgetown, so I'm 30 years out. If you were to ask about, was this anything I did for my PhD? No. Like that whole area of chemistry I haven't touched in 35 years, right? And I'm an inorganic chemist, by the way, so that means I've been living in the same metals for a while, that kind of thing, or this kind of structure, until something pops up. And then I might say, okay, well, let's try this instead. And be okay with, maybe just being okay with failure, which, is also good for students to realize. And sometimes it's based on maybe I'll write a grant and see what happens. My favorite negative grant review started with, "This could have been a good proposal." And I just stopped reading. So, does that help anymore? Okay, great.
I was going to pop in on the end of that. Is a lot of the time when I was running a research group, I found that often the graduate students were more afraid of risks. And so I was able to get undergraduates who were really excited about a more risky project. And if it failed, they wanted it to fail quickly, right? And so I was able to have them gather and learn a lot. Maybe the project wasn't successful, but it could set up for the next student. Like, we tried this, it didn't work, then the next student would do that. It was more of a synthetic, and so I wasn't more target-driven synthesis rather than the methodology. So we didn't have to screen all the parameters, like, we want to make this molecule. Okay, that didn't work. Now we got to try it this way. And so I was able to throw a little bit more high-risk projects because they failed quickly. Or they succeeded quickly with an undergraduate, and then you could develop the protocol to hand it on to more of a longer-term process in that lab when I was working there.
Something else. Is this one on? Oh, yes. Something else I was told, like, before I even started was, like, keep in mind, particularly with undergrads, like, no one student has to be on the project from the start to the publication. So, like, you can, like, obviously if somebody comes in the middle or towards the end, you're going to have to catch them up a little bit more. They might have to do some more reading at the front end. But, like, you can kind of put it down, let the next student come in, get them up to speed, and then move it on from there. So if you have, like, a project that you think is, worth a paper, and that's going to take, I don't know, 4 undergrads, then you can just kind of parse it out like that.
One of the other things that I've seen work pretty well is, especially if you have a student that can only sign on for a semester or less, or maybe 2 semesters, is what does it look like for undergrad labs when you're rethinking about maybe introducing new undergraduate labs to the curriculum? And those often make really good bite-sized projects that maybe you've read something in literature that you can have them kind of churn out and work out the kinks from the undergrad lens, or outreach activities. So if you have something really interesting in your lab that you might want to think about, like, how could I turn this into an outreach activity, then sometimes undergrads will get pretty excited about that because they have a very tangible output at the end of the day, that they have a product that they can showcase. So just some other ideas.
Other questions? Comments?
This might be for Jeremy since you mentioned it, but I'm interested in finding out a little bit more about leveraging industry for internships and like how you develop those connections and what makes that sustainable?
So that's a great question. Currently, what I've done is leveraged existing connections that are already on campus. There's a lot of academic internship programs on campus. And so what I had done previously is our internship program was just kind of haphazard. And if a student found a internship, they could then try and find an advisor to get credit for it. And I basically just like centralized it and said, hey, everything's on the website. Like if you want to do this, if you have an internship, then here's your default process to go through. And so it made it a lot easier for students to kind of navigate that process. That was the first aspect. In terms of making the connections, I also work with the American Chemical Society Student Affiliates Club. We have a chemistry career day every year where they invite local industries to come in. And so these industries are coming in, they're trying to recruit either students for internships or jobs. Honestly, I actually don't hear much about the students getting internships there because those students generally don't need the extra college credit or they don't need to pay for the college credit during the school session. So like most of the students that I'm getting right now who are taking it for credit, which is the only way I'm able to track it, are a lot of the CPT or students who are taking it at nearby research institutes, like for example, Salk or Scripps, where they're working with a research group, but they can't get paid for it. The way they can do it is through course credit through San Diego. So I leverage a lot of those options and making them available. But I'd like to do a lot more because students say, hey, do you have an internship ready for me? I'm like, I wish I had a list of connections ready to go for you, but here's where you can start searching. So I haven't done that step yet, but that definitely needs to happen. But most of the students are finding them without me. Like, yeah, I did all these internships. Like, cool, tell me about it. Like, I want to kind of record this and make those connections. But there's so many options out there for our students.
Can I ask a related question about, does anybody have co-ops where students can get an internship or something outside and continue to stay enrolled and still live on the dorms and have student status? Because Butler is starting a co-op process, but I'm curious how it works at different places and if that's been successful to get your students into more longer term, because some industries don't have just 3-month summer things. They want them to stay on full time for like 6 months or something like that. So I'm just wondering if other places have something like that.
So we don't have a co-op program that I know of at Ole Miss, but I know engineering programs, co-ops are really huge. So if you're interested in kind of following those structures, you could get connected with engineering faculty. I know Kathy Ellert at Miami, Ohio. Her PhD dissertation was all about like how to start co-ops and how to get students connected into those within engineering ed. But I'm sure she has publications out there about things, and I know her; she'd be very willing to talk with you.
All our co-ops are in engineering. I'm so happy to connect you with that team as well. They have a pretty robust model, and that does include that if you do a co-op, it must be paid, and that's really important to remove liability. So I will just mention that.
Yeah, I'm at Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, and it's not for undergrads. We have a master's program in polymers and coatings, but I think we have a 4+1 program that a lot of undergrads opt into in their junior, senior year. I think some of the seniors of fourth year do end up doing that internship as an undergrad, technically. So if you need a player, I'll give you contact information for the person running that program. Maybe they can help you out with that.
I'll try to speak a little bit for the group we had here. We had discussions. We have some young faculty that have taught maybe for many years and are moving into research positions now, and so starting up in that, after not having done research for a while, and some faculty their research, they're 1 or 2 years into their tenure track. positions. We heard a little bit about getting started. But if we could talk a little more about, maybe some ideas or strategies for developing, but the other thing is getting the administration to recognize the time commitment for starting that. We have people that there's no summer stipend for working with students. There's no credit given. What are some strategies for talking to your administration also about research?
I don't know what to tell you about talking to administration. I would love to hear if these folks have good answers for that. As far as like getting started, I think some things I realized, especially when I was like very first getting started, for undergrads, I had to scale back the size of the project I was thinking would happen in one semester quite a bit. It wasn't a bad thing. Like, I was just thinking like a grad student or like a postdoc, and I was like, oh, I could do this in a semester easy. They can too. Well, they're just starting. So like scale back and then maybe like scale back again. But like also like keep in mind, like we said before, like especially if you're trying to publish with undergrads and things like that, like it's okay if the paper takes 4 years. It's not like, you should not, if you're at an R1 or something like that, you shouldn't be basing your whole research only on the undergrads. But they can help you and they can do really great things to work with you. As far as grad students and recruiting and things like that, like, well, as far as recruiting undergrads, like to my lab, I just kind of go to like anything students are at, and I'm like, hey, I'm Dr. Boyd. I'm willing to talk with y'all if you want to find research. And I generally have about 4 to 5 undergrads in my lab so far at a time. So I'm pretty happy with that. But I mean, some labs are obviously bigger, some are smaller. But to start out, I think that's pretty good. So yeah, I think just like hanging out with students as much as you have time for, and just like making sure that, I mean, I was sitting with Tommy in the conversation last night, and we were talking about like having an open door and just like talking with students can like get you a long way for a lot of things. And I think helping recruit students into your group, that's definitely huge.
Administration, that's tough. I think, okay, well, I'll offer a couple tidbits, but maybe this isn't going to be that helpful. Is there undergraduate research mentoring awards already established on your campus? And if there isn't, that is something to maybe consider asking administration if you can establish those sorts of awards. The reason being is, yes, it is a little bit more work to get those established. Then it becomes sort of ingrained in the university to promote undergraduate research and to promote the mentoring that happens. And sometimes that has been really helpful to show administration, like not only how much time you put in, but what is the value, what is the output that you're getting from mentoring undergraduates in research. So I guess that would be one thing. The other thing is just to think about what does your administration really care about. For us, somewhat, we're getting more pushed, maybe many other universities are too, talking more about like the career readiness side of it. So how does undergraduate research help with that? And there's, if you're not familiar with NACE, that's a good place to go, and that they have these skills, the top 10 skills, 20 skills even, that employers really look for. And so you can very much take that and say, okay, in undergraduate research, we know that all our students are getting these, and this is what employers are particularly looking for. So sometimes that can be helpful to move admin. NACE, the National Association of College and Employers, I think is what it stands for. Yeah.
I can just add to that. So
Yeah.
Kerr has a position paper that aligns NACE with elements of undergraduate research, and administrators love this. Yes, it is a really good way to get buy-in, because that's all they care about is, will our undergraduates get employed?
On their website at NACE too, they have some interesting statistics, particularly about undergraduate researchers and how it's like 88% of students that have undergraduate research are more, what's the word I'm looking for? More able to find positions. Anyway, they have a bunch of statistics on there to correlate undergraduate research with getting jobs, and that's really helpful too. So those would be my tidbits.
Yeah, I was going to second the idea with the undergraduate awards. I think that's a great way to get into something I've been trying to push for in my department. Obviously, with the R1 heavy graduate PhD program, the struggles that my fellow faculty run into is like they don't get space for undergrads. It's not in the formula. And so there are very specific space restrictions based on the number of working graduate students and postdocs that are paid by funding, and you squeeze the undergrads in there in the sides. So if you have a lab with a lot of undergraduates, it's not big in terms of physical the lab space. So that's a struggle that many of my faculty in a larger department may have. But I think getting that recognition that this is something that you want to support, that you want the students to recognize that as being supported is a great way to get in that. And I think there's also talking about developing of research projects. And that was one thing that I always like to do with students is bring them in. I'm like, let's start brainstorming ideas. What do you think is cool? Trying to get their own buy-in of the project. And even when I'm running the program for the internships where the students are showing up on their job and they're like, this is what you're doing, they're part of their coursework with me is like, okay, you need to write a proposal on what you're doing. And you actually need to go through and to understand all the different tasks, little machines you're pushing, the buttons you're pushing, everything you're doing. Why are you doing it? How does it fit in to get that ownership of that idea, which they may not get that opportunity. So getting students involved in the project design may not always, you have to kind of help and kind of coach it so that it's achievable in 1 year or 6 months or the start of a project, but getting their buy-in at the beginning definitely helps the project take off.
The idea for reaching and working with the administration, I actually was the inaugural director for our Office of Undergraduate Research in 2007, if I'm counting right. And so one of the things we used there, before the NACE stuff came out as much, was from ANCU's high impact practices, which if you'll notice, it says undergraduate research is in there. And so you can use that, and George Koo's work and Eric Boyd's work. There's a lot of those bits of information. And if you want, I still have the planning documents that we built actually at a Kerr Institute that used to exist. I have those and the next 2 strategic plans that I built with that program. All you have to do is find my email address, which is really easy because it's my first initial and my last name at swanee.edu. And I'll easily share all of that information with anybody that asks. And it just literally goes through and says, this is where, these are the monies we need in this way. This is how we need to get through and do these things. But the one thing I think I did best in building that plan was actively engaging with one of our advancement officers. And in fact, he came to the workshop and everybody looked at me and said, you brought an advancement person. And I went, uh-huh, because the one thing we need is the funding. And he immediately bought in. So then I had that advocate in every moment to start going and saying, we need this and this and this. And I did get a few gifts out of that. We need a lot more still. But when you start and you start to grow, then you can see what happens. Okay.
Yeah, my question was somewhat related to this NACE conversation.
Yeah.
Obviously, undergraduate research historically has produced a lot of PhD trainees, right? But as most of us know, in chemistry, it's been a tough cycle with forthcoming potentially tough cycles. So I don't know if Kerr or any of you have thoughts about how we as undergraduate research mentors should be preparing students for the realities of this admission cycle.
what I've been doing with all of my students in the last 2 years in particular is saying, you know, you have to be okay with getting the negative result. And then you apply to as many schools as you feel comfortable with. And as they're looking, I also try them to think about a couple of things. One of them is where that place is. I remind them quickly that you're going to go live there for 5 years. If you hate the idea, don't go there. And then are there ideally five faculty whose research sounds interesting? Because the problem we're running into is you may get in and then find out you don't have a spot in the labs you thought you wanted to be in. So that's part of it. And I mean, right now, everybody has managed to get in. If they got 2 offers, that was considered total success. But I just don't know what the next year is going to be yet at this point. But no, it is a real problem.
Something I tell like any student that's like applying to be in my graduate lab or undergrads that are talking to me about, you know, applying and things is like, I just tell them that like, if you don't get into grad school, if you don't get into your choice of grad school the first try, like 98% of the time, it has nothing to do with you. It has everything to do with funding, which still doesn't take away the sting, but I think it does help them realize that like, it's not because you won't be a great scientist. It's not because you aren't already a great scientist. It has really nothing to do with your abilities. Like most of the time it has to do with the fact that they can only fund 2 and they had 3 applicants or whatever. So just making that apparent and helping students realize that like applying to grad school is very different than applying to undergrad. So like encourage those conversations and things as soon as they're ready to have them with potential PIs and things.
I'm going to add one last thing there, and that is, you know, I mentioned that there were 77 students that have come through my lab. Percentage-wise that went to graduate school is actually fairly low. Because what I try to tell them is that working with me is not to go become a PhD chemist. It's you find your passion. And in one case, she came in so sure she was going to medical school. And then she figured out pharmacy school was what she wanted because of the work I do in anti-cancer drugs. Another one came in for 4 years. She was going to go to medical school. And she got into medical school. But she, in between, she did 2 years of gap years at St. Jude's in a research lab. Went to medical school for about 6 weeks, and then landed back at St. Jude's where she's now a lab manager. So I try to make it really clear to the students that I'm not trying to turn them into me. That's never going to be the goal. It's about growth.
Yeah, I was going to agree on that one. Is just kind of being aware and helping students become aware of that there are more career opportunities than becoming a professor. You know, part of it is discussing like, hey, this is not necessarily a direct career pathway. Like you can go to grad school, you can go to postdoc, and then you can cycle forever before you land. And so you just kind of the struggles and challenges of getting through that career while making them aware of all the other opportunities out there, whether they want to go to, you know, looking at policy, looking at law. One of my favorite discussions with undergrads is like, do you know how much that service tech from Perkin Elmer makes? How much am I paying that guy? And then they just like realize how, you know, when they come in, like learn an instrument. This is the most valuable skill that you can have. Most employable skill that you can have.
I almost took one of those.
Yeah, just because like you know how to use it and you've done research on it. And that's what they're not going to pay you to do our project. They're going to pay you to use your skills that you've learned with NMR, X-ray, whatever it's going to be to go off and do something different and new. So kind of helping them be aware of there are other options out there.
This is super hard. I mean, we're living this right now, right? And we had several students that didn't get into grad school and were just devastated for this past cycle. And I'm not exactly for sure what the answer is going forward, other than I totally agree with what's been said here and make sure that they have a backup plan. So we've been doing a lot more discussions about, okay, so if this doesn't work for you, then how are we going to try to get you to apply next year? Is that what you really want? Or what would a gap year look like? Is that such a bad thing? Type conversations. But I think the other thing that my office anyway has been working really hard on is what other things, what other skills can we give these students that would give them possibly an edge up? And talking to students about, you got to use every opportunity. And I know you're super busy as an undergrad, but you know that undergrad symposium that we keep emailing you about, go to that and present. No, truly present. And so just making sure that they're taking advantage of every opportunity right now, just to make sure that they have pretty impressive resume that might help. And also this idea of micro-credentialing, is this a big thing on other campuses? I feel like it's just starting here, but this idea of badging or micro-credentialing seems that employers are starting to respond more to this. So it's another thing. There's a lot of micro-credentials even that you can get on LinkedIn, for example, but to have students kind of check those out and see what other skill set that they can gain.
Just kind of to add to that, I think a lot of places will have incoming seminar speakers. People come and talk about the research they're doing or the work that they've done, and making sure that those speakers also represent a wide variety of opportunities to students helps students realize what else is out there, and then also encouraging your research students to continue to go to those talks. That could be the hardest part, I think, because then, you know, when it comes down to their senior year, they're ready to graduate, they didn't get into graduate school, it's like, well, did you go to those seminars where you could have learned about, you know, patent law, or you could have learned about, you know, what all these other options are available to you. So it's like kind of from the beginning recognizing that there are all these opportunities and encourage them to learn about them as much as possible, as early as possible, will help deal with, you know, whatever life's going to throw at them.
I'm going to just piggyback on that for a second. Years ago, we created a seminar program built into the curriculum, and it's actually a one credit sequence. And we do have outside speakers. And the last several years, we've actively started bringing in industrial speakers, including for this year. There will be a patent lawyer and a forensic scientist from the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. So that is actually a really great way to start offering insight into all these different careers that, you know, I think a lot of us have even forgotten existed. You know, because we went down the road of, I'm a professor, and I don't remember all the other jobs in the world.
Yeah, no, I was going to second that. I would say, unfortunately, I think my larger university, a lot of the talks are more fellow buddies and scientists, and but actually our chemistry club that I work with has been doing a really good job about bringing in local industry, local professors, or from different schools or different places to come in and give the students in the chemistry club exposure to outside what's going on, whether it's through like green chemistry or law or all the different activities taking place. I wish I could say I was directing that and leading that, but I think we have a really good group of leadership there that is really kind of taking that upon themselves and propagate it. I mean, obviously we're in a biotech hotspot where there's lots of local activity. So if you're a little bit more isolated, it might be more challenging. You might have to get the department involved. But if you have those, you know, opportunities, yeah, definitely leverage them, bring them in.
One thing we do that works really well too is we have a summer research program, and we have two different seminars where we invite 3 students who went off to graduate school, and they're, you know, first, second year they come back. They just share their experience with the summer research cohort. We also bring back 3 who didn't go off to grad school. So last year we had a high school teacher. He teaches AP chemistry at the local high school. We brought back somebody who works at one of the local biotech companies, and I can't remember what some government job. And they shared their experience, and the students were just blown away by all these other opportunities and it's just local alumni, or it's not even local. They're just alumni that you have contacts with. You know, one of them was my former research student. It was easy. Hey, Evan, do you mind coming back for this? And it can be a really great way to get students, and they're so much more approachable too, because they're only a few years older than these students. So.
I was just going to say, if anybody's interested in doing that, it's a lot of work to organize, but you might see if there's someone on your campus that already does that type of thing for faculty, because at Butler, there's like an advancement office or alumni association person or something that help organize a group of alumni to come back to talk to our intro to the majors class to like kind of give an overview of a few different careers. So see if you have a resource person that can do that for you, because organizing it on your own, I've done that before, but it's good to do. Yeah.
And if you have a research office, like a office of research, an advancement or whatever, ours is called Office of Research and Economic Development. They can often help you get connected with whoever that person is, or at least that happened for me this past summer. I mentioned that I was looking for more industry connections, and they gave me like an overwhelming number of names, which was wonderful. So they have a lot of connections.
Actually, that's a really good idea, David. I think you had asked about how to start that internship partnership, and that's a good idea to go to your advancement office or your alumni office and see if you can collect some names there that might be some good alumni that you can tap into.
Yeah, a lot of our chemistry club is really active, and so I know a lot of them are bringing back recent officers, alumni who are doing internships or getting jobs at local companies outside of my course program, that they come back continually, and so it's great to see that kind of an engagement. And then once you get it started and they recognize how the utility of that, especially since many of our students recognize that how challenging it is for our chemistry majors to find a research position. Just statistically, there's too many of them and not enough opportunities. They do a lot of really good outreach to their fellow students about how to get into labs, how to make those connections, how to find local internships in companies as well. So that's something that works really well, bringing those alumni and bringing that cycle in.
Okay, I'd like to move on to I'm past mid-career, I think, but keeping that fire burning when there's maybe not a lot of institutional support. I mean, there is institutional support, but maybe that doesn't go to the faculty members. And so what are some strategies for staying engaged? Because it's the right thing to do by my students, and I want to do it all the time. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, it's 8 weeks of my summer that I'm gonna, be in the lab for 8 or 9 hours a day, and it's a lot of effort. And I'm not 35 anymore. So what are some strategies?
Wow, that's a tough one. Because I still do. I mean, so I'm not sure, why you're asking all of a sudden me to figure out why I do what I'm doing. And I think part of it is the research does move forward. So, the ideas that I'm trying to develop and move forward, I mean, that's there. And so that time I'm seeing that. And then I'm seeing these students that are important to me grow. And, when I chose the kind of job I chose at the kind of institution I chose, I think, and that, I don't know where you're at, so that's one of the... Okay, yeah. Yes, yeah, so my colleague Dion Miles and you should get together. He's probably going to be up there sometime soon anyways. He's always, he goes up there all the time. But I think that's part of it, is you just have to remind yourself why you took the job you took, because you could have done so many other things. And You know, like I said, you just let the good things come a little bit at a time. And then you have that moment of really great result. Like, you know, you threw that NSF grant in and you didn't expect it, and then it shows up, right? Okay, great. And that maybe happens once or twice in your career, right? If you're lucky.
Well, it's after those expire, you're exhausted, right, from carrying. That's kind of the lull.
Right, but you're okay with that too, right? You know, yeah.
One thing, so when I got started, I had some ideas, a whole bunch of ideas, as we all did when we were much younger. And I started collaborating with somebody who was more senior. And it was a few years ago that he told me, he's like, you extended my career by 10 years. And so
Yeah.
I am now at around that age where he was, and that's my goal now, is to find somebody newer, younger than me with all this life and energy, and I'm going to look to collaborate with somebody who's got all that. And that'd be my advice, and that's what I'm going to try to take for myself, at least.
Not bad one. I like it.
Yeah, I was just going to add, like, community is really important, I think. And so I think having, collaboration between junior and senior faculty, and if I can make a shameless plug, I am part of this organization Sigma Zeta, which I don't know if anybody knows about that, but it's a national science honor society that has chapters at colleges all over the place. It's primarily focused on small undergrad institutions, but they have a national convention every year. It's for undergrads to come and present their work. It's a really, I think it's a really good opportunity, and they have national research grants. You can get $500 towards your research project. With a student can, I guess. So yeah, that was my shameless plug. If you want to know more, ask me. I'm the past president this year, so I can help you out. But yeah, community is, I guess, wherever you find it, whether that's internally or externally.
Got one over here.
This isn't a personal story because I'm still on the kind of rise into the mid-career. But so one of our faculty who had reached mid-career and was really burning out, actually, the department, with the department's blessing, actually completely shifted gears and ended up, now he collaborates with like 5 different research groups, but his research direction completely shifted. So I think there could be also finding new passions, and that can be scary to completely abandon what you've been doing for the last 10, 15 years. But I think there are potential opportunities, especially with as much as the landscape is changing, to pursue other things and find new life in other opportunities.
Yeah, I'll second that. I mean, because I did mention that this idea that I do work in anti-cancer drugs, but I didn't really start that until 2013. So, I went from this kind of chemistry to that kind of chemistry, and it sort of changed my interest in the research, which made me want to do more. Or you can be completely in a jump that's bigger than that. A colleague of mine at Washington and Lee, Eric Uffelman, was a organometallic chemist and became a internationally recognized technical analysis of art person. And he travels around the world with students and goes and does things like measure the Edvard Munch's The Scream. Like, okay, maybe that sounds like a fun summer.
Yeah, I agree, and I want to say thank you for all the responses. But sometimes those changes, they come up, and they don't involve students as easily. And so that's something that's a little like, oh, this is an experience that I can do, but it's harder for me. It's not like a research experience now that I'm going to offer to students. It's something that I'm going to engage other faculty members with and do X, Y, and Z. And that's it's hard to come to grips with sometimes, yeah.
We only have about 5 minutes left, so what questions do you still got? Come on.
Is there a question over here? No? I see it.
Wow. Either that or everybody's just hungry and they want to get over and find that pizza.
It's kind of a big shift kind of thing, but I'm actually working on initiating a chem ed project with students, and when I was working on revamping our whole lab curriculum, I feel like he was maybe a unicorn of a student who was both passionate about education and chemistry, but then I feel like there's not that kind of unicorn around the corner when I'm working on kicking up this chem ed research. Any advice on, is it easier to train somebody who's a rock star chemist to do educational research, or a rock star educational student to do chemistry kind of stuff?
I feel like that's an Abby question.
Yes. I feel like I tell students all the time, and senior faculty have told me many times that I will regret saying it, but I say, like, I will take whoever wants to work with me for as long as they want to work with me, as long as there's no problems. So I've had students that come from psychology backgrounds, education majors, things like that, and I have to teach them a little bit more about the chemistry background of what we're doing in that particular project. And I've had students that are allied health and biochemistry and lots of other things, and I had to teach them, more of the education side. And I've had some students that are like chemical engineering who kind of needed to learn both, and that was totally fine too. So just like meeting the student where they are. So generally when a student is interested in working with me, like I kind of tell them, like, these are the projects I've got going on. Do any of these sound interesting? This is what qualitative research is. This is what quantitative research looks like for me. So I can kind of give them an overview of their options, and then I say, like, what sounds good, what doesn't. And at least so far, everyone's found something at least that they could kind of pick and say, like, oh, this sounds interesting. And then we can kind of go from there. So trying to decide, what skills they need to build from where they're at. Does that help? Also, if you have a rock star chemical education researcher, I happen to know somebody that's always taking grad students too.
According to my watch, we have exactly 1 minute. And my phone says we're done.
I'll do this.
Hold on a minute.
Always putting a plug in. If you're interested and you're passionate about undergraduate research, come out and join CURE. So you can join the community, you can volunteer, you become a chemistry representative, get involved in the national organization. There is the QR code you can take a picture of and find more information. And then we're going to continue the conversation and the community this afternoon or this evening at 7:30 at Vintage Spirits and Grill. You said that's close, right? Yeah. Because it's hot and I don't want to walk far. So.
I was planning to use the patio, but it's going to cool down as the sun goes down.
So again, thank you everyone for attending and joining us in our conversation, and please continue.